Peace, family. Welcome to another episode of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. I am Ikemba Ajore of We Charge Colonialism, host of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. And I'm here with my comrade. How's that? How's the value? Oh, man. I can't hear you. All right, so Brother Frank is having some technical issues at the moment. Well, hopefully he can get his sound going. But while he's getting his sound going, definitely appreciate everybody for tuning in, tapping into another one of our podcasts and book club. We're still reading Set the World on Fire. We're going to be looking at chapter 3 of that book in the second half of the podcast. There's a link to the book in the chat. Hopefully everybody's already connected or have access to our WC Book Club folder with all of our books. But if you look in the chat, there's a direct link to the book that we're going to be reading today. And we're going to be covering chapter 3 of that book. But before we get into the book, we always start off with our weekly roundup. Hopefully my comrade can get that volume going before I can't hear you. Yeah. So okay, hopefully he can get that situated. But before we get into the weekly roundup, just want to promote, let everyone know that November 10th that there's going to be, I'm going to share my screen, in Boston, there's going to be a 60th anniversary or commemoration, I should say, of the Message to the Grassroots speech. That's going to be happening in Boston. I'm going to pull this up on the screen. Yeah, so if you're in Boston or in the Boston area, the Malcolm X Symposium honoring the 60-year anniversary of the Message to the Grassroots speech. I'm going to put the link to the symposium, the Eventbrite page, so that you can register in the chat. Make sure you register. Make sure you attend. That's going to be on November the 10th. This is the 60-year anniversary of the Malcolm X Grassroots speech that was given in Detroit. And this is right now, it's scheduled to be at MIT. But location may change, so make sure you register. So if there's any change of location, that you're made aware of that. So register ASAP. Register today. The Malcolm X Symposium honoring 60 years of Message to the Grassroots speech. Come join us for an incredible program as we commemorate the 60th anniversary of Malcolm X's powerful Message to the Grassroots speech. The symposium will be a gathering of like-minded individuals who appreciate the significance of the speech and its impact on our society. During the symposium, we will delve into the historical context of the speech and explore its relevance in today's world, and will engage in thought-provoking discussions, listen to captivating speakers, and gain a deeper understanding of Malcolm X's influential message. Whether you're a history enthusiast, a social justice advocate, or simply curious about Malcolm X's impact on American society, this event is for you. Be a part of this in-person event and connect with fellow attendees who share a passion for social justice and equality. There will be plenty of soul food and engagement. Don't miss the opportunity to honor Malcolm X's legacy and reflect on the lasting impact of his words. Join us at the Malcolm X Symposium and be inspired. Don't miss out on this remarkable gathering. Mark your calendars and join us at the Malcolm X Symposium. Got the hiccups out of nowhere. But yeah, so that's November 10th. Definitely make sure you register. And again, I'm going to put the link to that in the chat. And I'm thinking about Malcolm, that speech right there, Message to the Grassroots. I think that speech is what kind of inspired me or motivated me to want to do grassroots work, to want to get into the community and really connect with the community and engage the community, and talk to them about this need for organization and struggle against colonialism, to organize for nation building and revolution. Like the seed was planted in that message to the grassroots speech, as well as the ballot or the bullet. But I think like Malcolm X really activated me when he, in that speech, when he makes that distinction between the Negro Revolution and the Black Revolution, right? And how many people use revolution, the word revolution, loosely, right? So people, they talk about revolution, but are they really, serious about doing what it takes to bring about revolution, to bring about liberty for African people? And Malcolm, he says land is the basis of independence. So if you're not talking about a land of our own, then you're not serious about revolution, right? And so I think like it's important. Now, another thing, I think about Malcolm. What will Malcolm say today, in light of what's happening in the Middle East, what they call the Middle East and Palestine, right? And I think Malcolm would be very critical of what he's seeing in Palestine, and he'll be saying "Free Palestine." I believe Malcolm would. For one, Malcolm was Muslim, right? But he aligned himself with other oppressed people around the world, other colonized people around the world. So I think he would be very critical of the U.S. And Israel and their policies and their actions towards the Palestinian people, because you have, it's an apartheid state over there. And African people know what apartheid and segregation, what that life is like, right? We've experienced it and we continue to experience it around the world in this global society. With that being said, though, Frank, how's the volume? How we doing? And still don't got you. What happened, man? man. Yo, what you? All right. So I don't know. Well, we got started. Hopefully, Frank can get things going. What I'll do is I'll go into what I was going to discuss, which is the Congo. Again, thanks for joining We Charge Colonialism. This is the podcast and book club. Make sure you like and share the podcast. We actually, I think we organized this podcast. We try to be here every Saturday at 10. And I think we organized this meeting this morning last minute due to our schedules, but we're going to push through. But with that being said, make sure if this is your first time being here, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you let your friends and family know about this podcast, because we really have some, I think, important discussions as it pertains to African people on the continent and the diaspora. So I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to, I came across this book on Lumumba, detailing the plot to assassinate Lumumba. This is from Council on Foreign Relations, their website, which is a think tank, a U.S.-based think tank. They're part of the colonial, institution. But this is a book that I came across, and the story itself, I think, was more important to me than the medium. The Lumumba plot, the secret history of the CIA and a Cold War assassination. This is by Stuart Reed. He's an editor of the foreign, foreign relations? It's foreign relations or foreign policy. But it's connected to the Council of Foreign Relations too. But there's a magazine. If somebody can remind me, I think it's called Foreign Policy. But Stuart Reed, he's the editor of the magazine, and of this and of the CFR website. So this particular book he has put out is detailing the assassination or the plot to assassinate Patrice Lumumba. Patrice Lumumba, who was the first and rightful prime minister of the newly independent Congo, as Congo gains its independence in 1960, in which they gained through struggle. It was a lot of organizing and struggle on the ground in Congo to sort of force the hand of Belgium to relinquish their direct control over Congo. But there was plans by Belgium and others to still maintain their control over Congo despite its independence. And I think it kind of gives us a idea of the type of enemy we're dealing with when there's concessions that are being made, or even in our struggle for nationhood and independence, when it appears that there's a victory by African people, we have to understand that there is still, as long as the colonizer is still breathing, they're going to be plotting and planning to reverse any gains that we achieve, or any gains that we attain. And Congo is a great example of that, because I think despite Congo gaining direct control over the politics of its country, Belgium and others, they were looking to still maintain control over Congo through its resources, through its military, and so this indirect control that was going to transpire after Congo wins or gains its independence. And so everything that you see happen in those first several months, which culminated in the assassination in Lumumba on January 17th, was part of that strategy to gain indirect control over Congo through neo-colonialism. And this is something that Nkrumah spoke about. So just going to this, says it was this is about the book. It was supposed to be a moment of great optimism, a cause for jubilation. The Congo was at last being set free from Belgium, one of 17 countries to gain independence in 1960 from ruling European powers. 17 countries, man, to gain independence. At the helm as prime minister was charismatic nationalist. Patrice Lumumba. Just days after the handover, however, the Congo's new army mutinied. Belgian forces intervened, and Lumumba turned to the United Nations for help in saving his newborn nation from what the press was already calling the Congo crisis. In the military, again, going back to that, Belgium still had officers in key positions in the Belgian army, right? And this is important to highlight. Like, there's still the Belgium, just because Congo won its independence didn't mean that the Belgium just everyone left and they had no sort of influence on what was happening in Congo. That wasn't the case. So there was going to have to be sort of, after independence, there was still going to have to be another war sort of waged internally. And this is why after the revolution, the war, the battle is still, or should I say, the fight for maintaining independence is not over, because you still have to deal with the internal conflicts with those who still want to maintain the old order. So let me finish this. I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but chaos was still spreading. Frustrated with the fecklessness of the UN and spurned by the United Nations, Lumumba then approached the Soviets for help, an appeal that set off alarm bells at the CIA. To forestall the spread of communism in Africa, the CIA sent word to its station chief in the Congo, Larry Devlin. Lumumba had to go. Within a year, everything would unravel. The CIA plot to murder Lumumba would fizzle out, but he would be deposed in a CIA-backed coup transferred to enemy territory in a CIA-approved operation and shot dead by Congolese assassins. Harmaskjaw, too, would die. He was Secretary General at the time of the United Nations. He would die in a mysterious plane crash en route to negotiate a ceasefire with the Congo rebellious Southeast. And a young, ambitious military officer named Joseph Mobutu, who had once swore fealty to Lumumba, would seize power with U.S. help and misrule the country for more than 3 decades. For the Congolese people, the event of 1960-61 represented the opening chapter of a long horror story. For the U.S. government, however, they provided a playbook for future interventions. And I think that that's an important note right there. For the U.S. government, however, they provided a playbook for future interventions, right? Because the U.S. has a long history of intervening in the political affairs. The economic affairs is a given because that's what the imperialist colonists want to do. They want to dominate the world, the global society, the economics of the global society. But they intervene in this history, intervening in the politics of other countries. Part of that is to gain control over their economy. Frank, back. How we doing? We still struggling? I can't hear you. I don't know if people are able to hear you in the chat or not. I can't hear you at all. What you doing different, man? You got some headphones in? You have some headphones in your computer or something? So I don't have no problem with holding it down while Frank gets it together. So what I'm gonna do is go into you're gonna put some headphones in. All right. Yeah. So they can't hear you. Again, appreciate everybody for tapping in. Make sure you like and share. And we're here every Saturday the goal objective is to be here every Saturday at 10 a.m. Natasha, who is the third part, a third head of our podcast, wasn't able to join this morning, and she's of course doing she stayed doing some good work, pushing forward the work. So want to wish her peace and power. Nah, Frank, I don't know what's going on with you. I don't know what's going on with you. So I'm gonna share the book. Just let me know if you're able to tap in. But I'm gonna share the book again. The link to the book is in the chat. The link to the book is in the chat. We're reading chapter 3 today. Lock your screen. I don't know if it's the man. I don't know if it's the man that's behind all of this. All right, so he's going to jump off and try to pop back in. So I'm going to share my screen right now. So again, we're reading Set the World on Fire. And this is chapter 3, Organizing in the Jim Crow South. Again, this book is detailing the involvement of Black women, Black nationalist women, their role in bringing about the nationhood of African people, particularly like this is U.S. I think focus, but it is speaking to the wider Pan-African or Black nationalist movement, as we spoke about the UNIA in the last podcast. and Amy Ashwood Garvey's role, but it's sort of like detailing the involvement of Black women in these organizations, right? And bringing about, this struggle for liberation and the key roles that they played, because there has been traditionally there has been a history that has been told about these movements that hasn't really uplifted the involvement of African women. And I think it's important, sometimes, we don't want to sort of like separate African men and African women, and acting as if, there isn't this partnership or this balance that's taking place. But there is a history of erasing the role of African women, or downplaying the role of African women, or minimizing their role, which I think we have to combat, because we have a new generation of African women who are going to want to see themselves in these movements, right? And I think it's important that we all are able to see ourselves in our history and in our movements. This is why we had the movement, the Black Studies movement, or the movement for Afrocentricity or African centered education. These movements was a result of the erasure of African people and our accomplishments. And so when we look at African women, they also have a unique there's a unique form of oppression when it comes to African women, because it's not just a race thing or a class thing with African women. There's a gender component to it, where African women is sort of just a place relegated to a specific role within society. So with that being said, I'm going to go into this chapter. Let me see if little phrase. So, organizing in the Jim Crow South in 1937, Celia Jane Allen arrived at the home of George Green, a Black preacher and farmer in Long, Mississippi, a small community located between Greenville and Leland on the Washington County and Sunflower County line. The 62-year-old preacher might have been caught off guard by this new visitor, but Allen's arrival was certainly intentional. She wanted a place to stay, but even more, she wanted to secure Green support for her political activities. Allen, a native Mississippian who has been residing in Chicago, traveled back to Mississippi on behalf of the peace movement of Ethiopia to promote immigration to West Africa. Her arrival in Mississippi coincided with a tumultuous period in the state's history. Like other states in the former Confederacy, the lives of Black men and women in Mississippi were dominated by Jim Crow segregation, exclusion, racial violence, and terror. By the early 20th century, white mob violence was part of the fabric of Black life in Mississippi. Described by one historian as the most race-haunted of all American states, Mississippi was the site of 476 recorded lynchings, representing 13% of the nation's recorded lynchings from 1889 to 1945. In this tense racial climate, Allen arrived at Green's home in Long, Mississippi, intent on organizing rural Black residents around the issue of immigration. Although Green was initially skeptical of Allen, he eventually conceded and allowed the activist to stay in his home. So I want to stop there, because when I was reading this, some things stood out to me, right? Like the lynching. Mississippi, we all know, just from, if we know any history of Mississippi, we know Emmett Till was lynched there. Medgar Evers was assassinated in Mississippi. Mississippi was the last state to ratify the abolition of slavery, which they didn't do until the 2000s. I think like 2013, if I'm not mistaken. That's a serious like that right there. And that was an era, that was a oversight. That's a serious oversight, right? But this is the Mississippi, right, that we're talking about. And so when we're talking about Allen going down there and organizing in this climate, the second state to secede from the Union. You know, Mississippi is really racist, man. America is, but she's going down there to organize in this climate, and she's advocating for immigration to West Africa. This is what the peace movement of Ethiopia, that was part of their platform. You know, this was their one of their principles, right? That we're African people, and they were advocating this push to go back to Africa. They were also connected to the Black Dragon Society, right, which got a lot of the members in trouble. The founder of the peace movement of Ethiopia was jailed. Mitty Gordon, who's also a Black woman who founded this organization, right? And it's recorded that they had over 300,000 members, which is a significant amount. And as I go on, we'll see also more how big of an impact this organization was having. But that's a significant amount, 300,000 members, because in 300,000 members in 50 years, you know, that those numbers could triple. That could be close to 1 million people. Like that's nationhood right there. That's nation building. 300,000 itself is enough to form a nation, right? So these are people who were members of an organization at this time who supported the move to go back to Africa. And this organization was founded in 1932. This was after Marcus Garvey. He was deported, you know, years earlier. So the UNIA was starting to fizzle out because of Garvey's inability to be able to organize in these places, right? He was being marginalized by the state. But Mitty Gordon, who's the founder, she was a former member of the UNIA. So she was still carrying on the ideas of Marcus Garvey within this organization. So I know I've spent a lot of time on this, but I want to go back to the lynchings too, 1889 to 1945. They said it was 476 recorded, right? So put that in bold, recorded lynchings, because there's a lot of lynchings that were not recorded. That's 13% of the nation's recorded lynchings during this time. So even if you look at 476 within this time period, this is a 55-year time period we're looking at, 55 years, right? And I did the math, right? That was 8.5, so close to 9 lynchings a year was taking place during this period between 1889 and 1945. Almost 9 lynchings, and this is just in the state of Mississippi, right? So there's lynchings taking place in other states. So I was thinking about that. I'm like, just think about George Floyd. When George Floyd happened, imagine what happened to George Floyd happening 9 times, right, within 1 year. That a George Floyd incident happening 9 times within 1 year in just one state. It's also happening in other places, but 9 times just in one state. That's not even counting what's happening in Alabama, what's happening in Louisiana, what's happening in South Carolina, right? What's happening in Georgia, right? This is the United States of America. So she's organizing in this climate. Did my camera come back? What's up, Frank? Welcome back. Can we hear you? Nah, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to you this morning, man. Dang. I'm gonna keep reading. I'm gonna go a little longer. Just I don't know if I can. I don't even. I'm terrible with tech, man. I couldn't even tell you how to troubleshoot. But I'm here. Maybe you can go on your phone or something. I don't know if you're on your computer, but maybe use another device. That might work. So in the ensuing months, Island went on the mission to establish local branches of the PME. I'll say that to refer to the peace movement of Ethiopia from here on out. PME in Long and later in Motherville, a remote plantation community in southeastern Mississippi, a few miles away from the Alabama border of the Clark County and Wayne County lines. Later recounting her activities, Allen noted that she was successful in getting many thousands to heed the call and sign their names. Many places I was in danger and was advised not to mention to the people about going to Africa, she continued. But I never ceased to plead with them and was successful to leave the South without any trouble. By her own account, she managed to secure more than 4,000 signatures from Black residents in Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Missouri during the 1930s. In 1942, in a letter to one political ally, she claimed to have collected over 1 million signatures of Black residents who were willing and ready to abandon life in the United States for the prospect of a better one in West Africa. And I think this is significant too. You know, whatever that number is, right? We know that there was more than 300,000 members of the organization, right? And if they were able to gather 1 million signatures, because I can imagine that there was support for the organization in their movement by people who were non-members as well, right? You know, we had that struggle as organizers today, where we do get a lot of support from people who may not want to join organization, but they want to support in other ways, whether signing a petition or you know, sending resources or what have you. So I can imagine, but this is a significant number of people when you think about it. 1 million, again, like that's nation building. If you're able to get that many people, because you can't expect that everybody's going to be on board, that you can get 100% of African people. There's African people who want to continue to align themselves with colonialism because they feel as though that they benefit in some way, right? And there's a minority of African people who do benefit, right? They're able to get place themselves or be in spaces with colonizers that the masses of people can never be in, right? And so, you know, we'll never get everyone on board, but I think if we can get a significant amount and begin to build with like-minded people who want to end colonialism, man, we build with those people, and we do what we have to do, right? We can't sit around and wait for everyone. I keep checking from. All right. So Allen's organizing activities in the Deep South were part of the PME's strategy after their failed petition to Roosevelt administration in 1933. And years after the FDR petition, PME founder Minnie Lena Gordon and her supporters began to extend their political activities to the South, specifically targeting rural Black sharecroppers. In 1936, Gordon appointed Allen as one of the PME's national organizers sent to organize Southern Blacks in rural areas. From 1937 to 1942, Allen led a grassroots Black nationalist movement in Mississippi and in the neighboring states, advocating for Pan-African unity, economic self-sufficiency, and political self-determination during a period of economic instability. Drawing upon the Southern Black nationalist traditions popularized by Bishop Henry Manil Turner of the African Methodist Episcopal AME Church, Tuskegee Institute founder Booker T. Washington, and others, Allen called on impoverished Black men and women in the region to set their sights on Liberia, where PME leaders have received some assurances that relocation would be welcome. Right? Let me stop there. I wish Frank, you know, his volume was working, because Frank is from Liberia, and it would be good for him to speak to that. But you know, this 1937, 1940. One thing I want to mention is Gordon, who's the founder, Minnie Gordon. She would have to serve time, right? She was arrested during World War II and would spend the rest of the war behind bars, incarcerated because of this affiliation that they had with the Black Dragon Society during the war. Black Dragon Society was a Japanese organization, and the peace movement of Ethiopia was said to be affiliated with this organization. And I think that that there wasn't any. It wasn't a secret that there was an affiliation, and of course during World War II, because of the war between the United States and Japan, we know the history of Japanese being rounded up, put in the concentration camps. So any affiliation with the Japanese or any dissident, um, uh, anybody who was dissident or against the war, they were being incarcerated. I think Elijah Muhammad during this time had to spend some time in jail because these are another organization, Noble Drew Ali. These are organizations said to have some affiliation with the Black Dragon Society. I think that's a whole nother podcast or conversation. But again, like this is they're attempting to organize within this particular climate. And we can see whether it was, during World War II or the Cold War with the struggle against communism, trying to stomp out communism. Our organizers were under constant surveillance and threat of incarceration or death as a result of their affiliation with other nations or organizations that may not be friends with the United States. Right, so we're unable to pick our own friends and say who our enemies are under the power of the colonizer. Right, that's why the education is so important, because the education will never teach you, the colonial education will never teach you who your true enemies are. And as Malcolm, again, I always have to go back to Malcolm. He said they'll have you thinking that your friends are your enemies and your enemies are your friends. Right, that's the situation that we find ourselves in. The brother Frank, all right, Frank probably gave up. So I'm just going to read a little more before we close out. So deploying Black nationalist theory and rhetoric, including the tenets of Black political self-determination, racial pride, and economic self-sufficiency, Allen worked within the organizing tradition as she attempted to garner support for her cause. Center on transforming the political consciousness of individuals in order to build greater participation in civic and political life, the organizing tradition, as opposed to the emphasis of large-scale and short-term public events, known as the mobilizing tradition, represented the bottom-up, community-based political activism that was vital to the development of local leaders. Reflecting the grassroots and community-based tradition of struggles, the organizing tradition rested upon a developmental style of politics, which allowed for identifying and nurturing local leaders. This philosophy undergirded Allen's activities in Mississippi during the 1930s and 1940s as she worked to galvanize rural Black men and women and advance Black nationalist politics. This is great. This is great right here. With the focus on building relationships and developing local leaders, Allen led a pro-immigration campaign in the U.S. South, which she envisioned as a viable solution to the social, economic, and political challenges facing Black men and women in the United States and across the African diaspora. Her political ideas, however, were far more complex. Embracing a biological conception of race, Allen pursued an unlikely political alliance with Mississippi Senator Theodore G. Bilbo, a well-known white supremacist who actively supported racial separatism and, by extension, Black immigration. Recognizing his influence in the state during this period, Allen sought out Bilbo's support for her political activities and imagined that she might be able to use her ties to the senator to advance the movement. To that end, Allen tried, though unsuccessfully, to obtain Senator Bilbo's aid to curb white mob violence for the purpose of rallying support among Black sharecroppers interested in immigration. This right here, man, I think like this, for me, this is a miscalculation among our leaders at the time, even though I understand why they were doing it, right? They felt that there was sort of this mutual Uh, what? The man's playing Magic in the background? When you say Magic in the background, I'm thinking the Nas album Magic. Um, so that caught my attention. Uh, but I think this was a miscalculation though on the part of our leaders. Garvey did this as well. Elijah Muhammad also did this. Met with white supremacists, and it was based on this mutual, I guess, mutual. Uh, what am I trying to say? Like they agreed that I guess this mutual agreement that the races should be separated. That blacks should be among Africans, Europeans among Europeans, or blacks among blacks, whites among whites, and there shouldn't be this integration. And so they felt that they could sit down with white supremacists and work together to make this a reality. And so, Garvey himself, he talked about sitting down with the Klan when he was criticized for sitting down with the Klan, which wasn't a long meeting anyway, and nobody knows what was discussed. But even outside the Klan, he still sat down with other white supremacists. I think Theodore Bilbo, he sat down with him as well. Members of the White Anglo-Saxon organization, sat down, or White Anglo-Saxon Club. But for Garvey, and I understand this too, like Garvey, he felt like they was the secret government of the United States. Like they were the ones who were really running the government anyway. And so at least they're not hiding their intentions. So you dealing with the president of the United States or the senators, these people who are representing the United States, who may not say that they are members of the Ku Klux Klan. For one, Garvey didn't believe that. He believed that they just weren't open about it. And for two, like these people are lying in regards to their feelings towards Black people and being sincere about, bringing about equality and, oh, okay. I see. Bringing about equality for Black people in this country. And so we're going years and decades of fighting for rights within the United States government and not receiving those rights. And Marcus Garvey, like, of course you're not receiving the rights because the white man, whether he's president of the United States or president of the Ku Klux Klan, they have the same intentions when it comes to Black people. So this was Garvey, and I think others, also looked at it the same way because they're dealing with the power struggle. The federal government isn't doing anything about it. And so the power struggle that's taking place in the streets are with these white supremacists, are with organizations like the Ku Klux Klan, right? So, but I don't know if I still, would advocate like today. I wouldn't push for us to sit down with these people and negotiate. As the U.S. would say, we don't negotiate with terrorists, man. So it ain't going down. But yeah, I just wanted to speak to that. I'm gonna try to finish this section. I think there's probably a couple more paragraphs. Allen's story sheds new light on the range and complexity of Black women's activism in the Jim Crow South, shifting the focus from local struggles for voting and citizenship rights. While many Southern Black women of various economic backgrounds were actively involved in mainstream civil rights organizations and women's clubs, others found the space in Black nationalist organizations like the PME in which to agitate for Black political and economic rights. Allen's efforts to organize rural Black men and women in Mississippi and in other nearby states underscores the continued salience and influence of Black nationalism in the Jim Crow South during the 1930s and 40s. Significantly, Allen's activities highlights the crucial role women played in sustaining Black nationalist politics and reveals how these women strategically adapted their actions and ideological messages to fit local settings in which they were. Right, that's something else I wanted to touch on too. The organizing, right? Organizing local local leaders or organizing the masses to be local leaders, right? Going amongst the African working class and training them to be the leaders of their own community instead of people from the outside coming in. Now, there's people from the outside who are coming in who are organizing, right? But they're organizing not necessarily to dictate what's going to take place in those local communities, but connecting with the people who are on the ground. And of course, there's this push for this for a particular ideology, right? But how do we take this ideology and make it translate to the problems that people are experiencing locally, right? So even though the long-term objective is liberation, is African nationalism, but how do we address the local problems within that framework? So I think that that was important. Grassroots. It's funny because not funny, but it kind of is relevant to how we started off this particular podcast talking about Malcolm X, right? The event that's happening in Boston. And let me put that link back in as well. But the link, the event in Boston, the 60-year anniversary to the 60-year anniversary of Malcolm X's message to the grassroots speech, right? So we started off talking about grassroots, the grassroots, and here we are in this section right here, and we're talking about grassroots organizing. So again, this is like uplifting the role of an organization, not even just one woman, but an organization that was founded by a sister. It's like the same way that we talk about the UNIA and how Marcus Garvey founded this organization. Like why we don't talk about Mitty Gordon and the peace movement of Ethiopia, an organization that was founded by this woman who had over 300,000 members. And I'm assuming that's locally. So I'm not sure if this is membership outside the United States as well. But that's a significant amount of people. How many organizations, Black nationalist organizations here in the U.S. that we can say have 300,000 members, right? 400,000 members. So this is I think a moment in history, something that we can learn from as well as far as the grassroots organizing. It will even be good to have a book, I think, written about the organizing activities just on this organization, Peace Movement of Ethiopia. Let me see. As a matter of fact, I wonder, maybe I'll write the book, Peace Movement Ethiopia books. See if there's something. Yeah, I'm gonna do some more digging on this, but I'm wondering if there is a book that's focused just on this organization. If not, maybe we need to do some work on that. So, with that being said, I tried to hold it down. My comrades, Frank, Natasha, wasn't able to be here. Frank, mostly because of technical issues. But, continue to tap in. I want to appreciate all of y'all for tapping in too this morning. I know we kind of organized this a little late. We were a little unorganized in putting this podcast together for today. But we will be back next Saturday at 10 a.m. That's a given. So hopefully you'll join us then and continue to, check out what we have going on throughout the week as far as podcasts. We have the Political Prisoners podcast that will be aired on Monday. And also check out Friday. We'll be having a podcast. I'll be interviewing. Actually, it's a pre-recorded podcast interviewing a couple of brothers on the ground in comrades on the ground in Burkina Faso. So the Sahel on Fire. Look for that on Friday. Again, appreciate you all for tapping in. If this is your first time being here, subscribe to the channel. And until next time, peace.